In this lecture, we're going to learn how to add data persistence with Firebase. At the moment, the application is working offline, but it's not perfect. I've turned my internet connection off for this demonstration. If I were to scroll down, I wouldn't be able to view music uploaded to the application. Workbox does not cache data requested from APIs. It's been configured to cache static files like images, CSS, and scripts. It is entirely possible to cache data from Firebase. We won't be using Workbox to accomplish this. The Firebase SDK comes with a solution for caching data. The best thing about using the Firebase SDK is that it'll prioritize network requests over the cache. This strategy is the opposite of the caching strategy Workbox uses. Workbox will deliver the files via the cache before using the network. We want to prioritize the network because the data may have changed. We want users to be able to view the latest changes. The SDK will only use the cache if the user is offline. This behavior is what we want. By default, Firebase will not cache data. We need to turn this feature on. We'll open the Firebase configuration file in our project. Firebase calls this feature data persistence. We'll want to turn this feature on after we've connected with Firebase. After we've defined the DB object in the file, we'll use it to call the enable persistence function. The enable persistence function will tell Firebase to keep a copy of the database on the user's browser. If the user disconnects from the internet, the SDK will switch to using the local copy on the user's machine. With this one line of code, we've enabled this feature. Firebase will take care of everything else. We don't need to update our queries because Firebase handles this process internally. Our code won't break. The value returned by this function is a promise. We don't need to handle the promise, but we should check if an error occurs. We'll chain the catch function after the function. We'll be passed in an argument called error. Usually, Firebase will throw an error if it's unable to keep track of data on the user's browser. This error will mean offline support won't work. In the callback function, we'll log the following message: Firebase persistence error, error.code. The error code property will help you identify why Firebase can't persist the data. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the enable persistence function. You'll find a list of codes for why the function failed. Feel free to implement a different solution for handling errors. We'll keep it simple by logging a message. Just like that, we have enabled data persistence in Firebase. There are some things you should be aware of when using this feature. The first thing to be aware of is that the user cannot log in if they haven't already done so. Authentication requires a server. However, if the user was logged in before they went offline, Firebase will let the user be authenticated into the app since a token is stored locally. If the user is not logged in when they're offline, they won't be able to log in. The second thing to understand is that storage is limited. A copy of the database can take up room on the user's machine. Most mobile devices are limited with storage. Firebase will do its best with managing data, but we should be mindful of how much data we are requesting. Lastly, uploading files is not supported. If there isn't a connection, a file can't be uploaded. There's no getting around that. We'll need to handle this situation in our application. The uploader we created in our application will not be able to handle offline uploads. We'll need to update it to output an error if the user is online. Let's handle this problem before we test the application. We'll fix this problem in the next lecture.